so much danger. Ooh. Brexit stands as a symbol of that. It symbolises the crisis of Europe that has failed to respond to its people's need for protection from the major shocks of the modern world. That's inflation and loss of jobs, what it's referring to there. It also symbolises the European trap. The trap lies in not being part of the European Union. The trap is in the lie and the irresponsibility that can destroy it. And that lie would be populism. Because in the globalist world, you can't have another opinion. Who told the British the truth about their post-Brexit future? Who spoke to them about losing access to the EU market? Who mentioned the risks of peace in Ireland of restoring the border? Retreating into nationalism offers nothing. It is a rejection without an alternative. And this is the trap that threatens the whole of Europe, and anger mongers backed by fake news promise anything and everything. You know, which is pretty much what the globalists have done. They're promising you anything and everything. And who told you that Brexit was going to be a disaster? How do you know? You who can't even run your own economy properly, you're telling England that they are going to be in trouble through Brexit. Your entire banking system is in a state of collapse. And here we are, China.org, ECB to keep interest rates unchanged at least through end of 2019. And Mario Draghi is about to start the TLTRO3, which will start in September 2019, which is basically quantitative easing by another name. So, in other words, they're buying up bonds and they're printing all kinds of cash to bail out the banks in Europe that are in a state of collapse. We have to stand firm, proud and lucid in the face of this manipulation and say, first of all, what Europe is. It is a historic success. The reconciliation of a devastated continent is an unprecedented project of peace, prosperity and freedom. Okay, take a look at the police on the street trying to herd your citizenry because they don't have enough money to pay their bills. And the shutting down of the internet. Let us never forget that. And this project continues to protect us today. What country can act on its own in the face of aggressive strategies by the major powers? Who can claim to be sovereign on their own in the face of the digital giants? Are you talking about sovereignty? All of these countries in the EU have lost their sovereignty. So it's too late, isn't it? Oh, now you want to be a sovereign Europe. Oh, I understand. How would we resist the crisis of financial capitalism without the euro, which is a force for the entire EU? Well, of course, then you can see that the entire EU is bankrupt. Europe is also those thousands of projects daily that have changed the face of our regions. The schools refurbished, the road rebuilt, and the long-awaited arrival of high-speed internet access. Not the ghettos, of course. This struggle is a daily commitment because Europe, like peace, can never be taken for granted. I pursue it tirelessly on behalf of France in order to take Europe forward and to defend its model. We have shown that things that were told were unattainable. The creation of a European defense capability. An army you mean? And the protection of social rights were in fact possible. And I guess that's why people are camped up all up and down the Champs-Élysées because they're homeless. Yet we need to do more and faster because there is another trap, the trap of the status quo and resignation. Faced with major crises in the world, citizens often ask, what is Europe? What is Europe doing? To them it has become a soulless market. And if you ask all the mom and pop stores that you put out of business through over-regulation, yes, it has become a soulless market. And it seems to me that anybody who's got any complaint at all is just not listened to. They just get pushed away to one side, fall through the cracks. And I would actually argue in today's world of technological growth that we are far from the trap of the status quo and resignation. In fact, we are redesigning ourselves by the day because we're now in a high-speed contact with each other, and a contact that you want to shut down through Article 13 and Article 11. Yet Europe is not just an economic market, it is a project. A market is useful, but it should not detract from the need for borders to protect our values that unite us. Borders? Did I hear you say borders? I thought you didn't like borders. Nationalists are misguided when they claim to defend our identity by withdrawing from the EU, because it is European civilization that unites, frees and protects us. And so that's why all these people in all these countries have lost most of their sovereignty. And you want borders, but the nationalists are wrong because they want borders around their own individual countries to protect them from the onslaught of globalism at the request of their citizenry. But those who would change nothing are also misguided because they deny the fear felt by our people, the doubts that undermine our democracies. We are at a pivotal moment for our continent, a moment when together we need to politically and culturally reinvent the shape of our civilization in a changing world. And what they mean by that, that's code for to take away any kind of grassroots cultural history that you or your country might have or may be attached to. And I don't think that it's backward thinking to recognize that we have a past as well as a present and a future. And so what they're asking you to do is to completely give up your past and to buy into this whole global network that they are creating. And he's right. This is a pivotal moment because the cat is out of the bag and we now see what globalism really means. Now is the time for a European renaissance, hence resisting the temptation of isolation and division. I propose we build this renewal together around three ambitions: freedom, protection, and progress. Sounds like Ingsoc, doesn't it? Defending our freedom. The European model is based on freedom of people, diversity of opinions, and creation. Our first freedom is democratic freedom, the freedom to choose our leaders as foreign powers seek to influence our votes at every election. Now, of course, we're finding out through these data companies like Cambridge Analytica that it's actually our governments that are manipulating the internet, whether it be foreign governments or domestic governments. It is not the people who are the problem. It is the governments and the big powers and the big money that are manipulating the media. You know, the individual citizen, you try and get a letter printed in the paper, and you're lucky to do that. They wouldn't print an article from you and I, but all of the stuff in the paper, oh yes, just like SNC Lavalin can phone the Prime Minister's office and there you go, it's answered right away. But you and I, oh no. So you have to remember who these people are talking about when they talk about these kind of things. In this same spirit of independence, we should also ban the funding of European political parties by foreign powers. We should have European rules banishing incitement to hatred and violence from the internet, since respect for the individual is the bedrock of our civilization and our dignity. And that explains why your police are firing flash bombs, taking out people's eyes, blowing people's hands off, firing tear gas and spraying pepper spray in your citizens. These are your citizens, sir. Protecting our continent. Oh, here we're going to get down to it. Founded on internal reconciliation, the EU has forgotten the realities of the world. Yet no community can create a sense of belonging if it does not have protected territorial limits. Oh, well, isn't that what the nationalists want? Protected territorial limits? The boundary is freedom in security. There you go, there's 1984. Freedom in security. We therefore need to rethink the Schengen area. All of those who want to be part of it should comply with obligations of responsibility. They should comply with obligations of responsibility. Well, that really sounds like freedom to me. Stringent border controls, woo, and solidarity. A single asylum policy with common acceptance and refusal rules. We will need a common border force and the European Asylum Office, strict control obligations and European solidarity, which each country will contribute under the authority of the European Council for Internal Security. On migration, I believe in a Europe that protects both its values and its borders. Now you see, each country will have to contribute to another whole bureaucratic layer to keep all of those countries secure, when actually they were pretty secure before the European Union happened. Yes, they may have been bumbling on, yes, they were making mistakes, but the people by and large were happy and things were working. There was cross-border traffic and people were trading with each other. The same standards should apply to defence. Substantial progress has been made in the last 2 years, but we need to set a clear course. The Treaty on Defence and Security should define our fundamental obligations in association with NATO and our European allies. Increased defence spending, a truly operational mutual defence clause, and a European Security Council with the UK on board to prepare our collective decisions. See, already they're talking about the UK being on board. Are we going to see a stalled Brexit, like a never exit or a never Brexit? Our borders need to guarantee fair competition, and that's why you put all the mom-and-pop stores out of business through over-regulation that only corporations can afford to pay for. What countries in the world would continue to trade with those who respect none of their rules? I wonder. We cannot suffer in silence. We need to reform our competition policy and reshape our trade policy, penalising or banning businesses that compromise our strategic interests and fundamental values such as environmental standards, data protection and fair payment of taxes, and the adoption of European preference in strategic industries and our public procurement as our American and Chinese competitors do. Well, you're sounding like Donald Trump, my friend. Recover the spirit of progress. Europe is not a second-tier power. Europe in its entirety is a vanguard. It has always defined the standards of progress. In this, it needs to drive forward a project of convergence rather than competition. Europe, where social security was created, needs to introduce a social shield for all workers, guaranteeing the same pay for the same work, and an EU minimum wage, appropriate to each country, negotiated collectively every year. Now, I kind of did a double take when I saw this because, on the one hand, he's talking about let's get rid of all the borders and we're all going to be chummy and friends alike and so on and so forth. But when it comes to an EU minimum wage, appropriate to each country, negotiated collectively every year. And this was the problem that happened when they turned over to the euro. It was essentially, I don't know whether this was planned or intended, but what happened was, overnight, when the euro was introduced, the wages in each country basically remained static, even though they were paid in euros. However, the prices on goods went up to the same level playing field as Paris was on. So everybody's cost of living really went through the roof almost immediately. And so I just find it kind of interesting that, oh yes, we need to drop the borders and get along together, but now when it comes to sharing the money, oh no, we have to make it appropriate to each country and negotiated collectively every year. Getting back on track also means spearheading the environmental cause. Will we be able to look our children in the eye if we do not also clear our climate debt? The EU needs to set this target.